Testing. 1, 2, 3. Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. Let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. So it's Man Up Monday. The judge will be coming up shortly. I mean, he is on that it's not even CPT time, it's EPT time, elderly people time. EPT time, the elderly people time. I'm gonna say that too. Cause honey, he moved like a turtle. And I think he does it on purpose. No sense of time. So we're gonna have a good show. Man Up Monday with Judge Joe Brown and me, Dana the Rodana. We have to talk about, of course, Charlie Kirk, because he is still trending. He's going to be trending for the next probably 15, 30 days, definitely for the rest of this month. And well, by October 7th, which is my birthday, I don't think he's going to be trending anymore because that's going to be the 2-year anniversary of Hamas attacking Israel and Israel decimating Gaza. So by that time, they ain't going to be talking about him. However, we're going to be talking about him tonight, but from the aspect of the firings. People are getting fired because of their recklessness on social media. Listen, if you have a job, private or state or federal, but particularly private, with a private company, they could basically do whatever they want. Yes, you could sue them if you did not violate something that was in your contract, but they could do what they want. But a lot of times, corporations and companies should have a social media clause. But even if they don't, people are getting kicked out of school, fired, because you want to glee in somebody being assassinated. Now, I put a poll in my community section. Should people be fired for celebrating Charlie Kirk's Charlie Kirk? I've been saying his name so much. Charlie Kirk. Should people be fired for celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, right? His assassination. And so far, majority of people saying yes, right? But it's kind of a close call. But my thing is, don't do it. It's not worth it. Doctors getting fired. So and people want to tell on you, but we're going to talk about it. Also, Trump went live from the Oval Office today and he signed a memorandum. He's going to be sending the task force to Memphis, Tennessee. Yes, he is. And of course, the judge is happy because of that. Now, he's saying he's still going to send the task force and National Guards to Chicago. It was reports saying he changed his mind. Maybe not the National Guards, but he is saying that he's going to send a task force into Chicago. He's going to send it into Memphis. Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, is a red state. They have a Republican governor and a Republican majority in the state Senate. So he has the governor working with him because it is a red state and Memphis is a hot mess. Let me call him to see where he's at. Are you at home?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
All right.
He's coming. So anyway, so we're going to talk about that when the judge comes on because that is his hometown and he could give us, the details. I didn't really have a monologue for you guys. And we got to talk. We're going to be mentioning the North Carolina train stabber, another North Carolina man. Of course, we have to talk about Supreme Court because the judge is in the house. Always got to talk about the law. make sure I have everything in order here. So let me play this clip while we wait for the judge to come up. He should be coming up shortly. Let's start off talking about what people are saying about Charlie Kirk, because this is Bill Maher in his podcast, right? And a lot of times Bill Maher can be very objective, which is a good thing. Oh, let me change this here. Give me a second, guys. Yeah. And so I'm going to play this clip of Bill Maher talking about Charlie Kirk.
Just the fight I am been having with the left, while I'm, of course, the irony, as a lot of people in my position, is still a liberal, just a traditional liberal, won't go along with their, like a lot of the stuff that's just crazy out there too far, which gets Trump elected, blah, blah, blah. As I always say to my woke friends, we voted for the same person. You're just why she lost.
Oh, I get it. Okay. Took me a second. Sorry, I had to absorb that.
Okay. You know, they're the people who don't want to talk. It's my main issue with them. And Charlie Kirk was a guy who, like, he was always talking. And I talked to him here. You know, the right wingers say what you want about them, but they talk to you. They're not into this leftist think. The left really has much more of a, I don't talk to you. I don't want to deal with you. You're deplorable. I can't break bread with you.
Yeah.
That attitude, and like all the right wingers, they don't have that attitude. No, again, I didn't vote for them. And Charlie Kirk and I certainly don't agree on much politically, but he sat here. He's a human being. He's not a monster.
And a husband and a father.
Yes. And I liked him. I liked them all. They're all nice people when you meet them in person, and they're not as crazy as they would. Nobody's as crazy as they make them out to be.
So I have, and that's what I do appreciate about Bill Maher is his ability to be very objective, because you don't have to agree with everyone. And just because you disagree with someone doesn't mean you need to have an attitude or be nasty, or be rude or talk bad about someone. Listen, have a good debate. Have a good debate. And that is why a lot of people are sad and upset about, first of all, how he died. And I think that's what's really bothering a lot of people, the way he died. And I get it, because that was horrible. But people who are he has millions of supporters. They had the big rally in London this past weekend, and I think it was that guy Tommy Robinson who led the rally. Now, I'm not a fan of Tommy Robinson, because I've heard a couple of things that he had said about particular religions and groups of people. However, they were chanting Charlie in UK. So he has a very large following, good and bad. But just because you think of someone in a negative way, when something like this happens to somebody in a horrific type of way of dying, does that give you the right to be nasty and to celebrate somebody's death? No. Listen, he was able to dish it out, Charlie Kirk, and he knows what comes with the territory of being a public figure. But whether I agree with you or not, what I love is the ability to debate, to discuss, to have, whatever discourse, to talk it out. Even if we walk away and we still are on opposite sides, come with respect and you leave with respect. And a lot of people who you disagree with are generally nice people. But I do feel from the left a lot of people from the left, they could be very nasty and rude and crazy. So people want to paint MAGA as crazy and rude, but if I had to choose, that is just a response that MAGA people is throwing back because they're defending themselves. But an initial approach, when you initially have some type of conversation with a MAGA person versus a left progressive liberal Democrat, the left progressive Democrat are always nasty and crazy. Hi.
If you disagree with them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you disagree with them, they're nasty and they're crazy and, you know.
Well, it's their thing. They tend to lack self-confidence in themselves, but they have a real weird assurance that they are right. And in their righteousness, all must fall before them. All principle, all nuance.
So Black Chulo says Charlie Kirk is a white supremacist, but even if he is, I would still debate a white supremacist. So what if you think that?
Well, I know a lot of young black folk that follow him.
Yeah,
and most of the ones that have a problem with him, they are more often to the fact that it's an obvious target for the con they're selling, which is follow me, subscribe, do what I say because I tell you you are a victim and I tell you that these other folk are devils. So follow me. And that gets you nowhere at all because it does not lead to solutions. That thing might have been subject to a bit of functionality more than a half century ago when colored, the Negro, black, Afro, black needed some motivation to get out from under this mindset of feeling inferior. And what's going on is instead of it moving on from there, it's devolved, and now again we have a new set of parameters that establish the feelings of inferiority. It's kind of crazy, and it's obvious if you know what you're looking at, but most people don't. So it becomes self-defeating.
Yeah. Well, I want to start off talking about Trump and the National Guards, right? He's bringing a task force to Memphis, and he made he was live today at the Oval Office making an announcement, signing a memorandum, and I want to play a couple minutes of this clip.
Who's standing with us, as you know. I'm signing a presidential memorandum to establish the Memphis Safe Task Force, and it's very important because of the crime that's going on, not only in Memphis, in many cities, and we're going to take care of all of them, step by step, just like we did in D.C. We have virtually no crime in D.C. right now, and we're going to keep it that way. It's our nation's capital. We're going to keep it that way, or we're going to federalize it if we had to, but we don't have to anymore because it's in such great shape. This task force will be a replica of our extraordinarily successful efforts here. And you'll see it's a lot of the same thing, although the numbers here are really something. They're really bad. Now, we did send FBI in about 4 months ago to work, and it brought some of the numbers down. And they did a great job, but we're sending in the big force now. We also sent them into Chicago on a sort of a moderate basis. And we brought down crime a little bit in Chicago. But we're now going to bring it down very big. We're going to be doing Chicago probably next. I was with a great businessman, a man who is involved in all cities through his business. And I say, who do you think should be next after Memphis? And he said, sir, you've got to save Chicago. We're going to wait a little while. But he said, you got to save Chicago. You can't let it go. And this is a very prominent man that everybody knows in this room. Another man in Memphis was saying, Bill, he was saying, very interesting, he's on the board of FedEx. and his hotel is about a block away. And he said, when I walked there, I said, you know, I don't want to do this again. I never want to do it again. And they won't let me walk there. They take them in armored vehicles. They take the board members of FedEx in armored vehicles like a block away to the hotel. This shouldn't be the U.S. This shouldn't be the United States of America. The task force will be a replica, as I said, and it's going to be, I think, equally successful. This is a tremendous success we've had in Washington, I can tell you, and everyone knows it. And people in the White House that work here and other people that I know are calling me and thanking me. They're going out to dinners. They're doing things that they haven't done in years. The effort will include the National Guard as well as the FBI, ATF, DEA, ICE, Homeland Security investigations, and the U.S. Marshals, and more along the prosecutors. We're going to have DOJ led by U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Tennessee, who is here or not here? Who's that person here? That person is going to be very busy. So we're going to have U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Tennessee, and most importantly, Pam Bondi's here. She's heading it up, and she's doing an unbelievable job in every respect beyond this. So also worked with some of the members of the team right here on D.C., and we're very proud of that effort. We essentially had the crime down to a very low rate in 12 days, and within another 10 days after that, it was so incredible. And it continues at that level, and we're going to continue. We have to, because it's our capital. This team will deploy the full powers of federal law enforcement agencies and enforcement generally to restore public safety and get dangerous career criminals off of our streets. We're going to get them off. In 2024, Memphis had the highest violent crime rate, the highest property crime rate, and the third highest murder rate of any city in the nation. Other than that, they're doing quite well, thank you. A person is 4 times more likely to be murdered in Memphis, Tennessee today than in Mexico City. It's been, and you know Mexico City is not a cakewalk. It's been overrun with carjackings, robberies, shootings, and killings. There were 249 murders, 429 rapes, 5,616 burglaries, and 12,522 violent assaults in just the last little while in 2024 and in pieces of 2025, where it's actually gotten worse until recently when we sent the FBI down to see what the hell is going on. Last month, a vicious thug carjacked an elderly woman parked at the movie theater, dragged her out of the car, and body slammed her into the pavement, where she is still trying to recover. Probably won't be successful. So we're not going to allow this kind of savagery to destroy our society anymore. We're stopping it, doing one by one, time, but we want to go quickly. We don't want to lose Chicago. We're going to lose Chicago.
So what are your thoughts on him coming
You
to...
got one error in there. It's Chicago that's number 3. Memphis is number 1 in the murder rate. So is what it is. We've got an incompetent mayor whose nickname is Urkel, after the farce character on the series. And Young is in an interesting position. He's a Democrat, but he's nominally agreeing with Trump, probably because if anybody looks deep into him, there is this problem with a certain international hotel chain that has a very decrepit franchise downtown Memphis that is beneficiary of a $220 million allocation from Memphis to finance its renovation and reconstruction downtown. That was done through downtown development when the current mayor was appointed to head that by the last mayor, who had the nickname of Poppin' Fresh Doughboy. It's interesting because the money, which includes federal funds allocated by the city to this hotel, has a minority set aside that the company is advertising as 18.7%, which does not fit into the DEI rejection by this administration. Interestingly enough, the mayor has been advertising that it's only 15% because it looks like he and his ilk have gotten 3.7% of the $220 million in the associated profits and financing that comes from that. So I guess he's keeping his mouth shut because he doesn't want things to be looked into too deeply. He's not fit to do anything about the crime problem, nor is his chief of police, Davis, Madam Davis. We nicknamed her Madam Do Nothing Davis. She is not from the Memphis area. She got fired in Atlanta and was about to be fired, it seems, in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina for the same thing that has nothing to do with a SWAT team she allegedly mismanaged, but has to do with child pornography and some people she was hiding who it looks like are now doing federal time for kiddie pornography. So that's not savory. And we haven't had, well, before her, it had been 40 plus years since we last had a civil service chief of police. That position had been subsumed by what we call a director who sat at the political pleasure of the mayor and could be replaced without much to do, so that there was responsiveness to the community needs. The last time we had a chief, which was back 1982, everything got completely out of control because the chief had an idea that was old-timey, that had nothing to do with old-time law and order, just the structure of things. And the mayor at the time, the late Wythe Chandler, who became a judge, a circuit court judge afterwards, had great problems with it. And he just said since there was a director, he chose not to nominate a replacement chief. Well, we haven't had one in 41 years. Now we have Miss Do Nothing, who promptly has had her gun stolen from her by some of these street crooks. So that's kind of embarrassing.
Well, I want to play the response.
And by the way, I've been around and about Memphis all day today, and I was asking, and I haven't run into a single person who is not very enthusiastic about this coming to Memphis to restore order.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people that live in these cities welcome it. So I want to play the response from your mayor. He was on Al Sharpton's show.
Yeah. Al, Chicken George, and Urkel. Okay, go ahead.
The National Guard and anybody else we need. And by the way, we'll bring in the military too if we need it.
While Trump claims both Tennessee's Republican governor and the Democratic mayor of Memphis have asked for intervention, the mayor says he's done no such thing. And while he welcomes federal help, that doesn't mean he wants to see troops in his streets. He joins me now, Memphis Mayor Paul Young, a Democrat. Mayor Young, we appreciate you joining us tonight. Had you heard anything from the administration before the president's announcement or since about what operations it intends to conduct in your city?
Yeah, well, the first I heard of it was on Monday when I got a call from the governor's office that this was potentially coming. I did have a call with the White House and asked them to shift the type of support that they bring to the city and align with the strategies that we have been implementing over the past 2 years. We've seen significant decrease in crime in our community. We've seen double-digit reductions in all categories, and we want to build upon the success that we've had. Investment in FBI, DEA, ATF, those traditional law enforcement partners that can take our investigations to the next level. That's the type of support that we had been talking about. The National Guard was something that we just found out about. It's not something that I believe is going to help reduce crime in our city. I think that the way to reduce crime is to invest in the things that are going to intervene and prevent crime in the first place, and help us identify the small number of people that are wreaking the most havoc in our community and getting them off the streets.
Let me start right there, Mr. Mayor, because in several cities where Trump has either deployed federal troops or flirted with the idea, crime has been trending downward, in some cases substantially. And though you still have one of the highest murder rates in the country, which you've acknowledged as mayor, the Memphis Police Department also just reported that crime in the city is at a 25-year low across major categories. So is this federal intervention even necessary, and how are you preparing for it?
Well, I do think that we need broad partnerships with law enforcement agencies. I believe that we need more resources to support the groups that are on the ground working with the young people, changing their direction. So the partnerships are necessary. I don't necessarily think the National Guard is necessary. And my goal as mayor, now that the decision has been made, as you know, the governor and the president have the authority to make the decision. And my goal as mayor is to make sure that I'm able to work with them and help identify how will those individuals show up in our community.
You know what's so pathetic about Urkel here? He's the mayor of the city, but he can't even show up at a 4 or 5-star restaurant without 2 squad cars worth of uniformed police as bodyguards because he's scared of the people. He can't walk out in the streets, and if he has a community meeting, he practically has the SWAT team surrounding all the walls to put on a show of force because he just doesn't have the presence nor the charisma. He's boule as can be.
Aren't you boule too?
What's that?
You boule too.
No, I'm not.
Oh.
I can walk anywhere in this city and people will welcome me. I don't know where it is. White, black, brown, red, yellow. I get welcomed with open arms, and I walk down the street and everybody says, that's our guy. I can walk up to some young Crips and start talking to them and get their rapt attention while I'm there. Shake hands with them.
Here's my thing. Right. Here's my thing, though, because one of because Al Sharpton is like, well, crime is going down, so why he got to bring in the National Guard?
It's not going down. That's a damn lie. The local conservative media, let's start with KWAM, KWAM, has been exposing how the police department has been directed to underreport violent crime. And when they have gone and checked out the emergency room admissions and the police reports that are not published, crime is up. I've been involved in the situation for the last, well, more than a half century in this area. It's not going down. You can see it out on the streets. You can see it at night by how vacant the town is. You can see it in that all of the businesses that we used to have populating a given main thoroughfare are now closed. We've had restaurant after restaurant closed down.
Well,
Midtown and what they call Cooper Young, which is part of the Rainbow Coalition, that's okay. They favor that because I guess the government does. The whole blue creepy thing is turning into a creepy rainbow thing. That's their business, good politics for them. But they've got a Congressman, Steve Cohen, who is deep off into supporting the rainbow and not the people that he represents. And his primary legislation item in 19 years is a binding resolution on the congressional cafeteria to use nothing but paper straws, and that's about all he's done. So it's a disgrace in this town. The clerk of the General Sessions Court has a reputation for unsavory dealing with public funds. You've got a reputation.
Let me ask you this real quick. 2 things. Because one of the reasons why he is bringing in National Guards and creating these task force is to help ICE collect up illegals, right?
Yeah, I mean, Memphis, I'm assuming that everybody's following the law, but Shelby County jumped from a very, very low percentage up to 35% in a very short time.
Here's my second question, though.
Now, if they're legal, fine. Welcome to the place. Memphis is the center geographically of the United States, or at least in terms of distribution opportunities.
But here's my second question. when the federal government, like the National Guards or task force, come into a city, do they take over police departments? Do everybody in the city
They
municipality
supplement
have to answer to them? Like what?
they supplement it. The way it works in America is you depend on local law enforcement. If you can't, then the sheriff does it. If the sheriff can't do it, then the state agencies do it. And by the way, I keep getting something flashing on my screen. Are you sure you want to leave? And I keep having to hit cancel. Don't know what that is since I'm not touching it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, you have this back again. Somebody is trying to get me knocked off of here. But in any event, Urkel here doesn't know how to wipe his ass real, or Al Sharpton either. They haven't figured out what to do with toilet paper. So he has zero credibility, and this clown has zero credibility. And he's not doing a good job. So part of this problem is that the electoral process in this area is suspect. Since 2000, over the last 24 years anyway, we have had very suspect election returns. And in fact, in 2008, the Justice Department came in and actually put up the money to replace all of the machines, with a finding that there had not been a legitimate election in this town since 2000. And they keep coming up with quarterly reports stipulating the same circumstances. And finally, about 3 years ago, the county commission spent the money, and then they warehoused the machines for a year and a half. So the first time they used them in a countywide election was in November 2024. And I chuckled when I was down at the Maine Election Commission offices on election night, November 2024. And a lot of the workers down there were running around frantic because there were more votes cast at various precincts than people had signed in to vote.
Right.
Interesting.
Well, listen, they coming, that task force coming, and you know what? I think a lot of people who have unsolved murders, like somebody in their family was murdered, with the FBI and the task force coming in, it could help solve murders. It could round up and allocate a lot of the illegal criminal migrants, and slow down drugs and guns and human trafficking. So yeah, I think
Well, basically, I don't trust the FBI.
no.
It's always been a politicized agency since its creation before World War One, with the specific task of targeting the first black world heavyweight champion, Jack
Yeah,
Johnson. Honest.
But Cash Patel is in.
I know, but you see, the problem is he just got appointed to head the agency. It's a bureaucracy.
Okay.
So you have people who have been in this agency for 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, and there's no telling what particular political or social or philosophical orientation they still have in their back pocket that they're using to filter everything they do through, that whoever's in charge is tearing his or her hair out trying to fix.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah. All right.
I don't have any problems with Patel. I think he's doing a fine job. So is Bundy. But I do not trust the rest of the people in the bureaucracy.
I get it. Yeah.
But National Guardsmen tend to be ordinary working people.
Yeah.
They're
the soldiers.
Yeah, they're soldiers, and they've got a relatively different outlook on this whole thing. And by the way, in case something happens, I can't clear this. It says, "Are you sure you want to leave?"
Hey, you look fine, so you could just.
Yeah, but it's reading on my screen, and I can't bring you down to see what you're up to. I just have a blank screen except for this.
Did you really order a new phone?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, but my thing is, okay,
they can't guarantee that it won't be hacked like this one is.
But it doesn't matter because you pre-ordered a phone that hasn't hit the market yet.
Well, they say it as of today's date. They were
Well, how long is it going to take for you to get your phone?
Well, I asked them to send me a tracking code, and the last one I ordered, which is this one, it stopped at least twice inside mainland China after it was manufactured in China before it left to go across the Pacific Ocean to Los Angeles, California, to the Long Beach Harbor. So the iPhones are made in China, and China has the technology. That ought to give you a clue as to what's going on. By the way, if you want to see a further clue, go pull out a kitchen drawer wherever you happen to be and see what's in there made in China.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to the Charlie Kirk mass firings, honey. People losing their jobs because they want to make fun of this man, being assassinated. So I want to play this clip. I have a couple of other clips because Mammy
See these
a
folks.
we have a black Mammy alert coming up, but I want to play this clip real quick.
See, I've been warning people this far left is dangerous. They sit there and they feel entitled, and they have been acclimated to being able to go out, cut up, burn stuff down, break stuff up, and they are not accountable. And if they do get caught, they get to claim they're crazy.
Right. All right, let me play this.
Not that it makes much difference with the average jury, but they don't know that, so they're claiming it.
The fallout from Charlie Kirk's killing has spread to the workplace. People are getting fired for comments that seem to celebrate or glorify the assassination of the MAGA activist and father of 2 young children. These companies and organizations have reported either terminating or suspending employees for posts about Kirk, and that includes Middle Tennessee State University firing a worker they say had, quote, zero empathy for Kirk's death. Conservative activists, Republican lawmakers, and even a doxing website are flagging the comments in what critics say is a campaign to punish those posters. Let's bring in Jessica Kriegel, the Chief Strategy Officer of Culture Partners. Jessica, thanks so much for being here with us.
See the rainbow up there?
Look, there is, of course...
See the rainbow?
The First Amendment. And
it's like ordinarily, with the subject at hand, a person wouldn't put something like that up identifying their perspective.
Okay, let me finish.
And freedom to speech in this country, but there's also private companies who hire people, and it would seem to me if it's a private company, they get to decide who they want to hire and fire. What do you think?
Absolutely. They don't need a reason to fire you if you're an at-will employee, which most workers in the U.S. are at-will contracts. So they can fire you because you wore green instead of blue one day. It doesn't matter. Really, what the leader's job at these private employers is to identify the workers who are aligned with the culture that they're trying to cultivate, the strategy that they have to achieve their results towards their purpose. So with American Airlines, for example, they said that the person was suspended because it didn't align with their purpose, which is to care for people on life's journeys. That's a perfectly legitimate and actually best practice for how you make decisions around hiring and firing.
And what about a public sector worker? Are standards different there?
Yeah, certainly. So with the government, it's a little bit different, right? And so what they do with the government, there is the Pickering balancing test, which looks essentially back from a 1968 Supreme Court case, which asked the question, does this worker's freedom of speech disrupt the government agency's ability to perform its work? And if it does, such as, for example, creating disharmony in the workplace, then that freedom of speech isn't necessarily protected. And so there is different standards, there's a higher bar. However, there still is the ability to, if someone is, for example, inciting violence, that is not protected speech, even for a government worker.
And so how do you think, I mean, you've outlined all of this well, but look, in the world of social media, where somebody can write something and it lives there for a while, or anybody can find anything, how do you think companies are navigating this? How should they be navigating this?
The great leaders are pausing. there is public pressure sometimes to act quickly, and then we get spun into this endless activity trap of trying to react, and we call that the action trap. But great CEOs are taking a moment, they're pausing, they're looking at what experience do I want to create for the workers who are employed here? What beliefs do I want them to hold about me as an employee, myself, the CEO? What do I want them to hold? What beliefs do I want them to hold about the company? And then they're making decisions accordingly. A lot of the CEOs are getting headlines right now because they're firing or suspending people, but there are probably 10 times as many CEOs who are having conversations with employees. They've seen something, they call the person up, they have a conversation, what's going on, and then they're acting appropriately after having more understanding.
So legally,
That's not quite what the law is, what she said. I used to work for EEOC and had a few cases concerning EEOC as well over the years. What's going on is there is this thing called the Hatch Act that generally prohibits government employees from getting involved in political matters past a certain de minimis point. But what you're really looking at is fallout. Now, when we had the last X Space Tuesday week last, I think, as I did the week before that, quite a few times actually over the last year or so, I've been warning people we do not need hate crimes because inevitably a so-called hate crime tends to backfire much to the detriment of the individuals or the group that the hate crime was created to protect. Now, you will notice what happened with the young immigrant on the public transportation in, what was it, North Carolina? They got her throat cut by that freak.
Yeah.
That was on, I call it a freak. You know, it's not normal to be schizophrenic. That means
I don't think you choose to be schizophrenic.
Well, I mean, a lot of people don't choose to be freaks either. They might be born with 3 arms or 1 arm, but
I call him a savage. You know,
well,
but
savage too. By the way, juries tend not to buy insanity defenses, even if the person is clearly insane.
Well, getting back to the job firing thing here.
But the deal is they're prosecuting this fiend for a hate crime, and he's Negro, Afro.
No. What? No. Yeah, we're not there.
Transportation.
No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about
I know, but I'm talking about what's going on here. You have to take the big picture. For the last 5 years, the Democratic Party and the far left has been hammering, we need hate crimes, we need hate crimes, we need to be protected, ours need to be protected, they need to be protected, this group needs to be protected. And I've been saying you don't need hate crimes because it doesn't add anything to the law. What winds up happening when you get hate crimes is you set up stuff where it can be used against the people it's supposed to help. I was merely giving an exemplar of this fiend, a mentally ill fiend, assuming he really is, who was on this public conveyance and slit that woman's throat and then bragged about he killed somebody white, and now they're prosecuting him for a hate crime.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to that in a second, but
but I'm just saying, in anticipation, what we have here is the consequence of this hate crime push when we start talking about what gets fired and who goes, because hate crime is a priori a restriction on free speech. So what you have right here is a classic example of free speech, which 10 years ago nobody would have had to deal with because it wouldn't have happened. But it does now because the stage has been set to attack free speech by the movement to set up so-called hate crime, which essentially is 100% free speech for the most part.
So so this is a Texas student and who she ended up getting arrested and kicked out of school for mocking and harassing Charlie Kirk's supporters after his death was announced.
Homie dead. Fuck your homie dead. Fuck your homie dead. He got shot in the head. Fuck your homie dead. Yeah, fuck your homie dead.
Evil is real, people, and it kind of looks like that. Evil. Evil. Murder is bad. She is evil. Have not said. Why are you being so hateful?
Why are you so hateful? Why are you so hateful? Yeah.
Hey, can somebody tell her to back up?
Can you not put the camera in my face?
I'm sitting here. You walked up to me.
Okay, well,
I don't want this. I said rest in peace.
Stop.
Just leave it alone. Please don't come after me.
get
I want to be left alone.
I'm not emotional, ma'am. Don't tell me what I am and what I'm not. You can get out of my face because I could tell you what you are, but you won't like it.
You're being aggressive. You're being aggressive.
I'm not being aggressive. My voice is
You are
very
being
calm. You're calling me
aggressive.
aggressive because I'm a black woman.
Not at all.
No, we're not.
No, you can. What is the term? You're in danger of getting your ass whipped because you're outnumbered and you're running off at the mouth and you don't have any means of defending what you're saying. Is aggravating people. And what you're doing is you've crossed that line and now you're uttering fighting words. Fighting words have always been an exception to the rules allowing free speech. In other words, if you say something that a reasonable person would say is calculated or likely to produce a combat, physical combat, that's what you call fighting words. So it's not protected.
Well, Texas Tech student arrested after hurling vile comments at Charlie Kirk mourners. Fuck your homie dead. There was another.
Yeah, kind of ironic, isn't it?
I thought I had another clip of her going crazy.
Well, we get the idea. It's hypocrisy. She'd been all bent out of shape and crying if somebody said something bad about one of her favorites. So it is what it is. It's like, hey, if you're going to get the free speech, remember, something's different about the current generation. The one I'm in, we used to run the dozens for sport. Elementary school, junior high or middle school, and high school.
Oh, I thought I saved it. I guess I did not. But let's see. Texas student arrested because I wanted to post what the governor posted about her.
She's ignorant, but I mean, it's wicked. You run you run a risk when you do this, and it's like you write a check, but can your ass cash it? That's the way it is. Don't write a check your ass can't cash. You know.
This is it right here. So Abbott was like, this is what happened to the person who was mocking Charlie Kirk's assassination at Texas Tech. Yeah, she was arrested and she was kicked out of school. She is no longer enrolled at the university after arguing with a white person about Charlie Kirk's death. Cameron Giselle Booker was arrested and charged with disagreeing with a white man saying she was not. I hate when people cannot write. They cannot write.
I know it's a lost art these days.
Yeah. Actually, let me
But you know what gets me? This is a classic example. Now, when all of her ilk on the far left were pushing zealously for hate crimes, they thought all of these white people were going to get prosecuted. I said, not going to be what happened. And look who gets bracelets put on. And that's why I was bringing it up. I thought you were going to get into her. She's got the bracelets put on. Look who is trying to rely upon the insanity defense for a hate crime in North Carolina. That clown.
Oh, yeah, no, I am going to get into that story. But So the firing, young woman was slammed by hundreds of users online for metaphorically dancing on Kurt's grave. Booker, that's her last name, also allegedly started shouting profanities at the mourners holding candles and American flags. She started yelling slurs and accusing everyone of being fascist for honoring Kirk. She was released on a $200 bond the next day. Reports online said that she was expelled from school for her behavior. However, Texas Tech has not confirmed that move. Now, can the school expel her for that? I don't think they can.
Well, they've been doing it because remember the wave of enthusiasm for hate crime? See, this is an example. 50 years ago, this would have been ordinary free speech and created a lot of heated debate and acrimony, but you were entitled to the free speech, however disgusting or favored it might be, depending upon what your side is. But now you pay a severe and sometimes draconian consequence, and it's not black people being protected from horrible remarks by white people. It's black people who are making those horrible remarks. And quite candidly, being fundamentally fair and objective about it, I hear more black folk or Negroes anyway saying something negative about white folk than I hear white folk saying something negative about Negroes. And black folk, you know, it's like,
No,
hey,
I hear both.
whatever. I separate Negroes from black folk because I don't like that N word, and I use Negro to stand in for it.
Well, I see both. I see white people saying negative, black people. Everybody say something negative about somebody. That's
Yeah,
just
I mean, hey, that's human nature.
that's just how society is. Now, however, because again, Charlie Kirk he was an influencer, and people want to compare him to Malcolm X and to Martin Luther King, and I want to share this here because
Well, just one side comment. There are a lot of young, really well-grounded young black males who are very upset that Kirk was killed.
I know that. However, he was not no MLK or Malcolm X.
Well, that's aside from the point. When you start talking about that, are you talking on the same level of give me liberty or give me death? I regret that I have with one life to give for my country. You see, there's a whole list, many, 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 many patriots, many, many, many Americans who have paid the ultimate price for supporting the country. And there's a bunch of them. The problem is that the public is only aware of a few of black, Afro, or African American persuasion. Now, that's where the thing comes in. And then, quite frankly, with due respect to Malcolm and Martin, I know some brothers that are just on the same level who did not get assassinated and had somewhat different political or, shall we say, philosophical orientations, and they weren't peaceful people. Well, let's put it this way. They weren't nonviolent people. They were peaceful.
Well, Bernice King, who is the daughter of MLK, she is reacting to these memes that, comparing Charlie Kirk's shooting to MLK and Jesus' deaths. And she's saying, I get tired. So this week, Bernice King, the youngest daughter of Martin Luther King Jr., condemned the killing of conservative influencer Charlie Kirk and expressed exhaustion over the sharing of an image that used her father's image alongside Kirk, Jesus, JFK, and President Abraham.
Where is Jesus?
Over here in the far
How
west.
we know what that entity look like? See, that's fictitious. We know what the rest of them look like.
Right. So she's, but this is the thing with people just doing too much on social media. And,
No, it's not that they're doing too much. It's just that the press, mainstream media, Hollywood, the advertising industry, the entertainment industry, the news reporting industry, and the political industry cited by the Democratic Party has for the last decade and a half been glamorizing hate crime. And you see, I have said it's going to be nasty when we get to the consequences. All of this, whatever people's intent, is eroding free speech, First Amendment stuff, which is why this country does not erupt in a whole lot of petty civil wars or situations of civil unrest, because it has free speech where people can keep their mouth shut or they can speak candidly and very to the point on a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And when you cut that down, it's like you tie down the escape valve for the steam on a pressure cooker.
Well, do you think that people are overdoing it after the assassination of Charlie Kirk? Um, Comparing him to these icons. Also, it was Trump and JD Vance lowering the flags half staff. And over the weekend in London, they had a very large, let me see if I can share this, a very large rally, right? It was thousands of people. And part of it, they were chanting Charlie, his name. The rally was for, I think, yeah, the march was framed around free speech and anti-immigration. Over 1 million protesters participated, and that's crazy. That's a lot. And then within this protest and rally, they were at one point chanting Charlie's name as well.
Well, that's not surprising. Look what they've done in Tel Aviv. Israel was a staunch supporter of Kirk, too. See, you have to get this. What's being done with Charlie Kirk relative to his demise is not dissimilar to what happened with who in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, George Floyd. But the difference was is you had an upstanding young man versus a junkie, and he got assassinated for upsetting some sick people on the far left by trying to deal with normalcy in life and some standards of morality and ethics, and somebody else got killed off for ODing damn near on fentanyl and some other stuff and for passing some counterfeit money. So you got riots and billions of dollars of destroyed real property all across the country. You have all sorts of glorification of George Floyd, deification. Very few black folk outside of Martin Luther King and Booker T. Washington have anything named for or after them, but yet you have all of this George Floyd stuff interjected into the national lexicon. So if you can get a dead black junkie, you know, you have a white guy who was talking righteous stuff from a conservative perspective. So you can expect his people to be very enthused about commemorating him. He was, what's the term? Great white hope.
Good point.
So what was George Floyd? Great
embarrassment. He
embarrassment.
was not the great black hope.
Great black embarrassment. You know, it's a shame when our
That's a good saying.
Are so, shall we put it, reprehensible in what they stand for.
I mean, what them dogs doing? Why you ain't put? Is that the baby or is that Purity?
That's both.
They're playing with each other. Why you ain't put them? We'll put them on in the out room.
Yeah, but out room.
Okay, show everybody. Show everybody your new child.
Come here.
Isn't she adorable? He bought me a new puppy. And her name is Mahogany. Her name is Mahogany.
Oh, somebody bought you a new puppy. Okay. Good.
That's the puppy that you bought me, that puppy. Yes. So the next time I'm in Memphis, I'm going to pick up my puppy.
This is the other one.
That's Purity.
She's grown up.
But the other one, the new one, is Mahogany. And it's mine. All right. So I want to.
The girls around here frolicking.
I want to talk about Candance. She did it. Candance is popping, honey. What? She get more views than all the goddamn networks put together. So she's
a very great person. She is one of the most gracious people I've ever encountered. And she takes her position and uses it for a constructive purpose.
Yes, and I was listening to it today and I caught this part, and of course people on X clipped it, where she said, maybe it was weeks or days, but recently, leading up to Charlie Kirk's assassination, he was basically threatened or trying to have his arm twisted to verbally, publicly come out in support of Israel. And we all know how Candance Owens felt about Netanyahu, and I share those same sentiments about Netanyahu. So I want to play this clip from what she said.
In the Hamptons, and he had more than one event, but he had essentially what was staged, an intervention was staged by Bill Ackman, because Charlie's rational thoughts about Israel were a no-no. This is not the route that you should be going on. And Charlie was surrounded by his friends, his quote unquote friends. Bill Ackman was very upset, and threats were made. That is what I am told, and I will tell you that I am very happy for Bill Ackman to dispute this narrative. In fact, he was asked to dispute this narrative. Max Blumenthal went out to him today, and Bill Ackman came back and said, I have receipts I can show you. And he did not provide the receipts. This is not how it went down. I know it went down this way. I'm waiting for one of them to go on record and to say that it didn't go down this way. It was at this time that Bibi Netanyahu was called and Charlie was invited to Israel. This was an under duress situation, I would say, because I've been in these situations before. When I started asking very sensible questions about Israel, as someone who had dedicated her political life to supporting Israel, many times alongside Charlie Kirk, I was met with the very same pressure. And just like Charlie was being invited to Israel, I was invited somewhere else. And when this arrived to me, it felt like a threat. I got to tell you that. It felt like a threat, like not like, hey, come here and we can educate you because you're my friend. More like, this is your last chance. That's how it felt to me. I can't speak to how it felt to Charlie. And I know that Charlie was offered a ton of money in this moment. A ton of money. Maybe would fund it, spend tons of money. And Turning Point, I guess, if it needed to go to a higher level, would have gone to an even higher level than it already was at. And I know for a fact that Charlie denied that funding. That Charlie denied, and what Bibi didn't include there, he declined to go to Israel for, I would describe this as like, re-education camp. We've seen it. You made an uh-oh, but we can help you. We just need you to come out to Auschwitz and take a picture. Yeah. We just need you to come to the Holocaust Museum and take a photo. We just need you to go to Israel and we can make this better. Charlie said no to Bibi. Okay. Bill Ackman, if you would like to dispute that, I would love to hear what you say happened, because our sources and what we have, it's solid. Okay. There were conversations that took place, messages that were sent at that time, and they are solid. So I decided another person that was there, and I am not surprised this person was there. If you've been listening to my show, Seth Dillon, I was going to talk to Seth Dillon, and I decided to message him last night about this Hamptons meeting. And Seth Dillon, who is normally very quick with a response, has not yet been able to respond. I'll show you this text message chain. And I want to be clear, I am not someone who normally publicizes text messages. But my friend was shot in the neck. And I'm just not really in the state right now to be polite when it comes to the answers that I am demanding, okay? This is me out to Seth Dillon last night. I sent him Bill Ackman's tweet because, he tweeted, "I feel incredibly privileged to have spent a day and shared a meal with Charlie Kirk this summer. He was a giant of a man." I said, "Any comment on this one, Seth?" He didn't answer last night. This morning I said, "Need a comment ASAP, please." He didn't answer. Then I followed that up and I said, "Trying again here, you were present when Ackman lost his mind on Charlie and when Bibi invited him to Israel and Charlie refused." Text messages immediately following this meeting are circulating. I find Ackman's statement, as though the meeting was somehow cordial, to be incredibly disturbing. Are you at all disturbed by that tweet? Do you feel, as I do, that this tweet significantly betrays the defined purpose and mood of his, and I presume your, final meeting with Charlie Kirk? ? He was unable to speak to me, but he did place some frantic calls to Turning Point USA. Yeah. You see, I went out to Seth, but I also went out to two other people who were at this meeting, and nobody is willing to go on record. They're all messaging each other, trying to figure out a coordinated response to say that, no, this was all quite cordial, but no one wants to go on record and describe it as cordial because they know someone's leaking, because someone's got a guilty conscience about what happened at the Hamptons. So I will again put it out there, Seth, Bill Ackman, and to the other individuals who I have not yet named, but who are going to be named later this week, who were at the Hamptons when Charlie was put under pressure, when Bibi Netanyahu called him and invited him to Israel, again, in a move that when it happened to me, and it wasn't Bibi Netanyahu, felt to me like a laced threat. I am inviting you guys, I will give you my platform, actually, to come clear matters up, to tell us what really happened, because, I think Charlie was definitely on the brink of changing some of his perspectives. And I can tell you factually, Charlie was praying the rosary. Charlie was going to mass. One of my last conversations with Charlie was me joking with him saying, just make the last step, okay? You are, I said specifically, you're too smart to be a Protestant. Just take the last step, Charlie. He says, ha ha. He was speaking about Mary. And typically when those steps start taking place, you stop referring to yourself, as I did, as a Judeo-Christian. Again, it is
Okay, that was the end of that. So I want to say this real quick. Please protect Candance Owens by all means, her husband, her bodyguards, because I love the fact that she goes hard on Netanyahu, and all those government officials in Israel. And that was her friend, and so I believe her. What happened in the Hamptons? What is your take?
Growing up,
What?
both of them in their early 30s. Sometimes when you had people that you knew well, spoke with, and they've died as a result of their political or social engagements, you get a different perspective. One of the main problems is that when you deal with Israel, it's kind of an interesting situation because you have in the shadows the Mossad. And under Israeli law, the Mossad has legal authority to carry out assassinations as part of the legal diplomatic process of Israel. It's one of the few mainstream countries that has that. It's not that the rest of them don't, but it's not approved under the law. Like in the United States, CIA does occasionally take somebody out or have somebody taken out, but it's against the law. So you can't claim credit for it, but the Mossad can. And the other thing that's interesting, Netanyahu claims to be an atheist. He's Jewish, but he's a Jew atheist. So, you know, he's of a culture without being a devout believer in the religion. So it's an interesting juxtaposition that sometimes people don't get. And Netanyahu is a very ruthless individual. She's playing a very interesting line. Her father-in-law holds a position within English governance that has to be neutral on this. And I suspect he probably approves of what he's doing, even though he can't do this openly himself.
Well, her father-in-law openly said he does not agree with some of the things she has said before in the past. But yeah, he can't openly say he does agree. So
her father-in-law has a position within English governance. He's an earl, which is as high under the aristocratic pantheon as somebody can get in English society without being close to being a direct relative of the royal family. It goes king or queen, prince, princess, and then duke and earl are on the same level. Duke if you're part of the royal family, earl if you're a commoner who's risen that high. So her father-in-law is an English earl, which is interesting.
yeah, well, you know, her assessment, you know, of what took asking a question of what took place in the Hamptons, that's a that's a good theory that could actually be a fact. That's a strong possibility that could have happened. And it's probably no coincidence to, you know, that looking at the aftermath of it. So
well, let me just interject this. If your father-in-law was the Senate Majority Leader for the United States Senate and held that position, not just because he was elected to a 6-year term, but held it essentially because of appointment in effect for life, how much information could you be privy to that you could do something with?
I mean, technically, you're not supposed to be privy to that information,
Well,
but
yeah, you can. See, England says because of your bloodlines, because of your social and cultural relationships, you have the absolute authority. See, it's not somebody runs something, say, if he's head of the Admiralty, where it's like he's Secretary of the Navy. He, because he is First Lord of the Admiralty, has the absolute discretion to run it as he sees fit, as though he were a medieval baron who was running something. You see, when his lordship presides over a court in England, that is quite, stop that. That is quite a bit different than being a judge on a comparable level in the United States. You hold a different position, which not so much is because you are elected to something or appointed to something. It's because of your bloodlines and the connections that have been established that you have that position, so you can move from.
Put them damn dogs in the back.
Stop that. Hey, ladies, be quiet. So what happens is that,
to shut up.
in other words, quiet, and you settle down. Settle down.
You got 2 bitches in your house.
Yeah, that's technically correct. Now, what happens, see, is that you have a situation.
Well, they saying pet the puppy. Pick up the
Well,
little one.
yeah, I did. Now, what goes on is this. Imagine a sorority or a fraternity, and you can be in this fraternity or sorority, and you're in there for life. And at one point, you might have been dean of pledges. At one point, you might have been correspondence secretary. At another point, you might be something. So your position does not come to you because you held this particular office within the fraternity or sorority. Your position comes because you belong to the fraternity or sorority. Now, supposing this organization was something you were born into or you got appointed into for life because of outstanding excellence. In other words, you got knighted on the battlefield, so to speak, because you were a great warrior, and they decided to bring you in on board with the nobility. That's what goes on in England, where you hold these positions not because they are elected or appointed to positions. That's not where you get your authority. You get your authority because of your status in society, which is one of the reasons the Americans rebelled against English governance way back in 1775, 76.
So in other words, you're saying she's kind of insulated with protection. How so? She kind of has some type of leeway to say what she's saying, but even if
But not quite, because
but what is wrong
there
with
is
what
a
she's
real
saying, though?
thing
But
with
but here's the thing. What is wrong with what she's saying? Why
nothing wrong with it.
nothing is wrong with it, but why are some people so oh my God, look what she's saying. She better
Because
be
they're
careful.
not used to it, because they're in America and they have to deal with political opinion, the press, and getting bad mouth. And see, they don't have a dignity over here that they have in England. You know what that is?
What?
You hold the position. The position has nothing to do with your authoritative status. That's yours for life. But if you are held to not have confidence, you resign. You see, in England, somebody says, I'm going to resign if I don't get my way. And the threat of the resignation gets them their way because they have such status, credibility status as individuals based on their individual standing in society, that nobody else can afford to have them say, hey, I will have no part of this, because it discredits you. We don't have that kind of thing over here.
Right. Well, guys, can you guys please hit that like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Share this video, share. People on X, repost. A couple more things, but before we move on, I do want to highlight this super chat. Thank you. D Grant says, Judge Joe, how do you feel about the liberal Black leadership? I feel they have went to a new low over Charlie Kirk compared to George Floyd, who is viewed as a martyr.
Yeah, it's true. See, the bunch you have is not really leadership. They're pimps. They're put in a position of figurehead status by the Democratic Party and the far left. So what winds up happening is they have to sing for their supper, and they do. They don't contribute much to the advancement of the people they look like. They don't contribute much to America. They're just basically hustlers. If they were preachers, they'd be pulpit pimps, and they're useless. Like, look at Al Sharpton. What has he done except recklessly run his mouth off over the last 35 years after courting around with James Brown back when? I
Yeah.
mean, what has he done? Nothing. He starts itching when he can't hold hands on opposite sides and starts singing "We Shall Overcome," and that doesn't do anything now. That's been out of the window for the last half century. So what does he do? He's propped up with low ratings because he advances the cause. He sounds like he hasn't an education. I'm interested to find out what kind of pulpit he actually has, because he doesn't appear to have any. Though he was made a preacher supposedly, what, 8 years old? And that's bogus. You can't be a preacher at 8 years old because you don't know anything about life. And if you don't know anything about life, you have no business trying to preach to somebody. So, I mean, it's just fake, straight up and down. And he's plantation showpiece.
Well, okay, so let's get into the North Carolina stabbing, North Carolina man. So the Charlotte man charged with the federal crime and fatal attack of Irana Zaruska on the city's light rail system. A federal criminal complaint was filed in U.S. District Court in Charlotte. This was on September the 9th, charging a Charlotte man with the federal crime in connection with the fatal attack of Irana Zaruska on the city light rail, announced Russ Ferguson, U.S. Attorney for the Western District of North Carolina. DeCarlos DeJuan Brown Jr., 34, is charged with one count of committing an act causing death on a mass transportation system. Brutal attack.
See, when you get the feds
Oh,
involved,
it says real quick. It says, if convicted, Brown faces a maximum statutory sentence of life in prison or death. Ultimately, his sentence will be determined by the court based on advisory sentencing guidelines and other statutory factors.
yeah, see, the problem with when you make what is ostensibly a local crime a federal crime, such as this, you run into all kinds of problems. For example, in the state system, you get charged with a crime, you're entitled to a list of all witnesses who will be testifying against you that the prosecution knows about, or, quote, in the exercise of due diligence, ought to be aware of, unquote. And they have to furnish that individual or those individuals to you, their theory of the prosecution, what their outline of the evidence is going to be. And in the federal system, you've got 15 days to file all motions. You aren't entitled to any advisement as to what the prosecution is going to be up to. The only evidence you're entitled to receive is stuff that your client is put in writing, or evidence or notice of evidence seized from your client. They don't have to supply you with a list of witnesses, and they don't. You don't find out what the witnesses have said until they testify at trial. And if they testified at a grand jury, you get about 15, 20 minutes to quickly gloss over transcripts of their testimony before a grand jury. And you may be able to persuade a judge to give you another half hour or maybe an hour to look them over. Whereas in a state prosecution, the defense gets weeks and such like to go over witnesses' statements, to investigate them, to come up with contradictions and counter witnesses and such like. But in the federal system, it's trial by ambush.
So it says,
That's a healthy thing.
It says here, North Carolina's chapter of the largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization in the nation has formally requested federal prosecutors charge Brown with a hate crime. We join calls for the U.S. Attorney to investigate the murder of Irana Zaruska as a possible hate crime, given video footage that appears to show the perpetrator committing on her race and gender after brutally attacking her.
See, this move for hate crime prosecution, murder is murder. And you obviously are not likely to be a great friend of somebody you killed. So, you know, it's kind of, what are you trying to do here? Who are you trying to make feel good? And what do you do to the whole system when you do this? Because you see, most of the people that support hate crime think the person on the right is going to be the victim, not the perpetrator, and not the person charged with the hate crime.
But he is diagnosed schizophrenia.
That, look, I've seen some of the craziest people in the world, represented some of them, seen them in my court. And juries just do not buy the insanity defense because most of them are familiar with insanity or mental illness, but unfamiliar with it. They have, in other words, too many relatives, friends, and associates that are mentally ill, but they aren't recognized as mentally ill because they're still functional. So they gloss over it and they expect somebody to be in a straitjacket before they are mentally ill. And even if the person's in a straitjacket, 9 times out of 10, they'll think the person is faking it. And they go for the insanity defense if they tend to identify with what the defendant has done and are seeking a way to do what is in effect jury nullification. I have had several instances of trials in my courtroom where the jury came back with a question, and it was the same question in essence. To wit, Your Honor, if we feel that the victim deserved killing, do we have to convict the defendant? So if the only time they'll buy insanity is when they've got an urge like that motivating them.
Well, I want to play this clip here because this Fox News reporter, he kind of he got in trouble and he had to come back and apologize because in this clip, they're suggesting involuntary lethal injection for mentally ill homeless people, where he says just kill them. Talking about homeless people, but I want to play this.
They have given billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you, or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Yeah, Brian, why did it have to get to this point?
Right.
So, which was kind of insensitive, talking about homeless people, especially homeless people with mental illness. And this is him apologizing, retracting that comment.
In the morning, we were discussing the murder of Irina Zaruska in Charlotte, North Carolina, and how to stop these kinds of attacks by homeless, mentally ill assailants, including institutionalizing or jailing such people so they cannot attack again. Now, during that discussion, I wrongly said they should get lethal injections. I apologize for that extremely callous remark. I'm obviously aware that not all mentally ill homeless people act as the perpetrator did in North Carolina, and that so many homeless people deserve our empathy and compassion.
Yeah, so
again, that in the name of sensitivity becomes a restriction upon free speech.
Yeah. Well, speaking of hate crime bill, right? I have another clip here of another North Carolina man. Now, he didn't kill anyone, but he was threatening to kill some Black children. Let me share this.
Breaking tonight, a North Carolina man who allegedly vowed to shoot up Black preschoolers has been caught by the FBI.
The suspect is 25-year-old Zachary Newell. Allegedly said he wanted to injure or kill 20 Black children, among other violent and racist threats, in a comment on YouTube. Brian Trader's been following this from the Live Center. Brian?
Yeah, let's show you where this is all happening. It's in Carteret County, down to the coast in Newport, North Carolina. According to the FBI, 25-year-old Zachary Newell on August 26th and 27th posted racist, violent comments on YouTube, including one where he said he planned to shoot up a preschool, injuring or killing at least 20 black children. On the 31st, Google reported that to the FBI, and then later that day, deputies in Carteret County confronted Newell, and they say at that point he admitted to making that comment. They executed a search warrant and took him into custody, charging him with a state charge of communicating threats of mass violence to an educational facility. No, he did not specify any particular preschool, and they say that he then posted bond and was released. Later that night, the FBI took Newell back into custody, and now he's facing a federal charge. If convicted, he could face up to 5 years in federal prison.
Actually, they'd do better off if they started reinstating principles of civility in the population, but they don't.
What is that?
In other words, duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, accountability, behaving in an appropriate fashion as though you live in a complex and interconnected society instead of off in the woods somewhere by yourself.
Well, I'm glad that the federal government picked up those charges because. Are you serious?
You know why I
Can you
say
hear me?
there's.
You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but you see, there's collateral damage to living in a free society. There are some things that are uncomfortable. But what you do is, you saw what they did with Trump under the Biden-Harris administration, where they engaged in lawfare. See, you have Maxine Waters, you have Nancy Pelosi's, and you have that bunch, and you have the Cory Bookers, and they're going around, the Al Sharptons, Chicken George Sharpton, and that bunch, and they're accusing everybody and anything of hatred and whatever else while they spew the same themselves. So when you let them get, if they are allowed to get back in charge again in a few years, you give them some tools to use for lawfare and to trample upon the Bill of Rights and use the power of the government for political and social oppression. See, that's a bad habit because it leads. This is just the start of this. This is not something that is long established in American culture. So when you let it start and you push it and everybody has these reasons that look like, oh my God, that's a righteous cause, the righteous cause is too easily corrupted. Like you drive 65 miles an hour down the freeway. If it's part of the convenience of modern automotive transportation, but lose attention for a second and somebody can get killed or horribly mutilated. So the collateral consequences for driving on a freeway at high speed are quick death or horrible mutilation and a lifetime of suffering. So we're willing to pay the collateral consequences for the convenience of the travel. Likewise, with a society like ours, there are collateral consequences to things like free speech, things like right to remain silent, things like reasonable search and seizure, et cetera, et cetera. So there are consequences to living in a society like this. It's not without cost.
Well, real quick, I'm gonna play this clip here because
I'm not approving of what people say, but I think the way to counter it is by vigorous and on point counter discussion. You refute the assertions.
So here we have indicted Black Lives Matter grifter Monica Cannon Grant, pleading guilty to 27 counts of fraud, spending the money donated to her race hustle violence in Boston on herself. So let me just play this clip. It's a quick 19-second clip.
Boston community activist who faces federal fraud charges is asking a judge to schedule a change of plea hearing. Monica Cannon Grant and her husband Clark Grant founded the nonprofit called Violence in Boston. It had the mission to reduce violence and raise social awareness in Boston. Well, they're accused of defrauding the nonprofit and its donors. Boston community.
Sounds like Memphis.
Well, this is in Boston, and we know Boston is sanctuary heaven for
That's
everything.
what they were trying to make Memphis. They've got 15,000 South Koreans whose presence is suspect, who've been hired toward the 30,000 that they're going to bring in for Blue Oval.
They're saying that the famous Black Lives Matter activist hurled the F-bomb slurs at Daily Mail when asked about stealing donor cash for luxury treats. Monica Cannon Grant, she was charged along with her husband Clark Grant in 2022 on 27 counts of 18 fraud-related crimes, tax violations. Oh, honey, they're going down. Anything with the IRS and you didn't claim. See, if you claim your taxes, that's one thing. They don't care if you owe them because, you know, as long as you claim it. But if you don't claim and then you're stealing, and then she says to the Daily Mail, respectfully, F you, she wrote in an email.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
What?
I'm telling the dog outside. Out.
She looks angry.
No, she just has to use the facilities. So
Yeah, I'm talking about this woman, the Black Lives Matter chick.
Oh yeah, well they're always angry about it. No, you don't. Outside.
That's her husband.
Yeah, they're always angry about something. That's part of
Chunky ass.
Part of the game. You're angry because you've been mistreated so badly. And
So
what
she's accused of paying herself $2,700 a week for her charity starting October 2020, contradicting public statements and her report to the IRS that she received no salary. Cannon Grant and her husband were accused of paying personal expenses with a portion of the then $1 million that they raised for a nonprofit charity Violence in Boston and $54,000 in pandemic relief funds. So yeah, it's a lot of fraud.
it's racism. It's white oppression. But then again, don't forget the first guy, big guy they did this to. What was his name? Al Capone.
Al Capone.
Yeah, that's what they got the gangster on. You know, he's the one supposedly pulled off St. Malvalentine.
Here's the thing is, so this is, I guess people saying, listen, they're saying I'm doing all this, you know, social justice work or whatever. It does not pay well. However, if you have a charity, you could put yourself on salary, but it's only a percentage, and because and a percentage of, I think, a minimum of 20% has to go to whatever your charity is for, and you have to claim taxes. Just put yourself on a salary.
Well, here's the thing. Preachers are supposed to be saving folk from going to hell, right?
Allegedly, yeah.
Whole lot of them pimp their congregations to get rich.
That is true.
So it's the same thing. This is what I preached about. I know this from the 60s. The movement might have had a great deal going for it, but many of the people who were running it were nothing but the equivalent of pulpit pimps. They were pimping the movement to get personally wealthy.
All right. So,
and that's one of the problems. That's what you get a lot of these folk that are talking about white supremacy and everything. They're not concerned about that. That's just a hustle.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. So before we get up out of here, always we have to talk a little bit of legal because that is your expertise.
Yeah,
To the-
but I mean, and by the way, on the last little point, interestingly enough, when they talk this, they are advocating a position that does absolutely nothing to change the circumstances, and it deactivates any inclination that the people they're supposed to be helping might develop to actually do something about their situations.
Mhm.
Hmm.
What does this look like? Let me bring this back. All right, so Trump shift millions in funds to HBCUs, tribal schools amid deep cuts, deep educational cuts, right? So apparently, the Trump administration says it will reallocate nearly $500 million in additional funding to historical Black colleges and universities and tribal campuses as it slashes grant programs for other minority students. The Department of Education announced the plan September 15th as part of its efforts to redirect money towards President Donald Trump's chief priorities. The department also plans to award $500 million in grants to charter schools and will invest more than $160 million in American history and civics education programs. In its announcement, the agency cited September 9th report showing declines in K through 12 student achievement as a cause for the additional charter school grants. Today, the department is making 3 massive investments, redirecting financial support away from ineffective and discriminatory programs towards those which support student success. This is by way of the U.S. Education Secretary Linda McNeil in a statement.
By the way, to give you a perspective, B-2 bombers have been bombing over in the Middle East, which has caused a great deal of aggravation amongst those who are the targets. But a B-2 bomber costs roughly 3 times as much as what you're talking about, $1.8 billion last estimate. Now they have a new B-21 to replace the 30-some-year-old, 35, well, more than that, 37, 38-year-old B-2 bombers. So each B-2 bomber cost about 3 times the amount of money you're talking about.
Well, so this is another part to it because before the redirection of the funds, the U.S. Department of Education ends funding to racially discriminatory discretionary grant programs at minority serving institutions. So technically, HBCUs will fall under that, but that is why Trump redirected money to HBCUs from these type of programs. So
In other words, he's reaching out in the damn fool Negroes who are following along with the buffoons and goons in the Democratic Party who are running the plantation are trying to reject it for what? Nothing? There was no such money coming under the Biden-Harris administration or under the Obama-Tang administration. And you damn sure wouldn't have gotten it under Hillary Clinton.
Right. So to be specific, the discretionary grant programs that the department will cease to fund will include both 2025 new awards and non-competing continuations, and the department will reprogram funding for the following. So Alaska, a Native Hawaiian serving institutions, predominantly Black institutions, Asian American, Native, Pacific Islanders institutions, minority science, engineering, improvement, development, Hispanic serving institutions. Approximately $350 million in discretionary funds were expected to be allocated to support these programs. These funds will be reprogrammed into programs that do not include discriminatory racial and ethnic quotas and that advance administration priorities. So that's that DEI.
Yeah, and that, by the way, is why Mayor Urkel in Memphis is being so cooperative, because he wants that 18.7% minority set aside, of which he's already gotten 3.7%, it seems. That is an anathema to Trump's program. So he wants people to not pay too much attention.
The Higher Education Act of 1965 has amended restricts institutional eligibility for certain discretionary and mandatory grant programs based upon racial and ethnic preferences and quotas in the student body. For instance, eligibility for grants under Minority Science and Engineering Improvement Program requires maintaining a majority minority student body, minimum of 50%. Strengthening HBCUs eligibility requires a minimum of 40% Black student enrollment.
Problem is, if you go to some of these HBCUs, you don't see a predominantly Black enrollment. And you most certainly don't see too many Black males.
So are they basically saying that we're going to redirect the funds, but it's going to be under a new label type of program, not this program? We're going to create new
In
programs.
other words, one that is race neutral. So we said that when we came up with the first affirmative action programs back in the mid 60s. And so you can't do this where you slant it towards a race. That's going to be struck down. But again, it was some Boule Negroes up in Berkeley, California, who collaborated with Bakke in the regents of the University of California to set that up. So,
but here's the thing now, because if it's a if it's a HBCU, a historical Black college, or historical Native or Asian American or Hispanic, well, they don't really have historical Hispanic colleges, but if it's a HBCU, that is still somewhat race based.
well, it's like, is it? See, here's where it blends in. What happens if you have a Catholic college?
Jesuit. I went to a Jesuit college. Yeah.
Yes, Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So
they owe reparations, by the way.
Yeah, the deal is that to a great extent, HBCUs are Baptist, Methodist, or sponsored by some Catholic entity, and is hooked up with the religious situation that is favored by the current administration.
The Trump administration?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So,
and see, it's only fair because you allow this secular religion, the rainbow cult, to proselytize and spread their imagery and icons all over the place and get to teach their particular cult to the children starting from kindergarten.
Okay, so let's back up just a sec here, right? The reason why this Department of Education under the Trump administration is ceasing these current programs and redirecting that money to the programs that they create, because maybe the prior programs that they are ceasing had that LGBTQAI in their eligibility or in their objective or in their agenda, because that's what they do. They slide it in there, and it's like, no. So
yeah, I mean, amongst other things,
other things, because we don't know, all of the stipulations that prior program had, because we didn't read it.
Most of them have been co-opted by the rainbow.
Mm-hmm. And co-opted by illegal migrants.
Yeah, and see, let me explain the bottom line on this. Male or female, you sit in a legislative body, or you have influence with the chief executive of the country. You have 16, 17, 18, 19, 23-year-old daughter who's something of an airhead when it comes to stuff like paying attention to the gas gauge on the car. So she and friend girls go out to party if they can find some place to party in your tip.
That story is so boring.
No, it's not
It
boring.
is too long.
Just let me finish. It's not even long. So what happens is your airhead daughter, granddaughter, niece, friend, child of a friend, they're out early in the morning. They're running out of gas and they get off the freeway. Do you want them to be able to pull into a gas station in a neighborhood where the people that run the place are respectable citizens, or do you want the people that run the place to be burglars, thieves, drug addicts, drug dispensers, murderers, burglars, and all of that? Well, the obvious answer is you'd rather your daughter get off to get gas when the light went on in some place where there are decent people that run the place. That's why a lot of this is getting implemented. It's because there needs to be some positive social engineering. You let a community go to hell like the Democrats did for years, where there's impoverishment, encouragement of the dependency, total neglect of moral fiber and character being implemented and inculcated in the people that live there, or at least with the students or the kids, the youth. You got a hellish place to be. So there are ways that you can go around that situation and rehabilitate the neighborhood. So this is a pragmatic effort to do some rehabilitation. That's not a long story.
Okay. All righty. That's it. Good show. Thank you, Judge. Where the dogs? Are they quiet? Did they go to bed?
No, one of them's over there and the other one's in my lap.
Oh, well, let's see her before we leave. Show her again. Pull her all the way up. Pull her up some more.
She was asleep.
Lift her up. Wake up. Hi, sweetie. Hi. Not you. I'm talking to this dog here. Hi, baby. My dog is sleeping right here. He was talking to him. Hi. She is so sweet. Oh. I'm taking her.
I think the big one would object.
Oh, that's her little sister now.
Yes.
Oh. Good night. Mahogany. I renamed her. Her name is Mahogany. Go figure.
Alice. Alice.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. And thank you, Grant, for the super chat. Thank you guys for tuning in on X and here, everyone in the chat, moderators listening, all you guys listening.
One last little comment. I want you to take control, not you, listeners, take control of your lives. Quit running for this game where they want you to be dependent upon them. They're not reliable. All they do is steal when you put them in office, for the most part. So
yes, and they lie
out and do for yourself. The basic way of making it in the United States of America is to do it yourself. And by the way, that's why there's a great deal of animus directed toward people who come over from a foreign source and make it in 10 years. It's because they're used to doing it for self. And some of the people here that have been co-opted into being dependent.
Well, real quick before we get up out of here. So I did the poll, 329 people. Should people be fired for glorifying Charlie Kirk death? 50-50. 50% said yes and 50% said no. Wow.
I think it's totally distasteful for somebody to do it because he was a courageous young man.
Fired.
Who, yeah, I said it's distasteful.
Well, you will fire them.
Some of the things that are being said, but I do not think anyone should be fired for free speech in the United States of America. maybe sidetracked in terms of advancement, may be assessed on whether or not it's causing disruption to the workplace, actual disruption. But I am always leery of any attack on free speech, however righteously intended.
Right.
Now, Charlie Kirk, I thought was all right. My son was a great fan, my youngest son. So some of his buddies are really upset.
Well, I never paid him no mind, but listening, I appreciate the fact that he went to the college campus to have that discourse, that engagement, because that's lacking in a lot of college campuses. It's even lacking in high school. So I love that. But some of his talking points, no, he needed to read up on some of those things. And one more thing, I don't allow
a religious angle, which was
which
part
is
of.
fine. No, I'm not even talking about
Yeah.
that. That's fine. I don't have a
But
problem
I'm
with
just saying that's
But
why
here's the
some.
thing. But here's my pushback against him is I will not have a non-black person, particularly a white person, try to give me a tongue lashing on my race or my culture. You're not going to give me a tongue lashing as if you know what you're talking about. You don't have all the
White folk
facts.
get talked about by black folk quite a bit.
No, that's fine. So here's the thing. Talking about someone is fine. Like you could talk about someone because people talk about people. I'm talking about you, the person like Charlie Kirk was an influencer. You have an organization talking about politics. And if you are trying to make a change, don't try and give a tongue lashing and not have any solutions. And then your one little solution is not really a solution. And why don't you, if you have a concern for black families, black dads, or black people, he has not once sat down and debated or had a conversation with black men?
Yeah, but who's supposed to represent black men?
It doesn't matter. He could easily go find some. So
No, that's the problem.
no, but
That's
he didn't even
but,
try to. So
look.
no, there are a lot of black men that would sit down and have a talk to have that
Yeah, I
conversation.
mean, I don't doubt it, but the problem
But
is
but do that. But I'm just saying, do that. Listen, people can say what they want to
I
say.
get it,
You
but
have
the
your own
problem,
opinion.
the problem is that before you talk over here, you need to rise to that level.
Real
So
quick,
you
Athena,
don't
I
need to be
did.
found.
Athena, I listened to a lot of what when he did debate people, when he was on college camps. Yes, I listened to exactly what he said. I'm not taking sound bites. I sit and listen. It was very interesting. It was interesting. That's what I'm saying. I love the fact that he was engaging with the back and forth on the college campuses. That is what's needed. You don't want an echo chamber. Young people need to be mentally challenged. Not young people need to get used to being uncomfortable. Young people need to get used to everybody's not going to think like you, so how
They
do you
get
deal with that?
They get protected too much
Right.
entirely.
And what
World
he did, he
not
came in
going
and says
very
no.
protective and
Right. He said we're gonna have a conversation, we're gonna have a discourse. I'm not gonna protect your feelings. I'm gonna be respectful, but we're gonna get in the mud, have this conversation, which was
but
lacking. So
what I'm thinking, there are two things here. One, it is not healthy to cast people into the world environment thinking that they are going to be protected and sheltered. That's not good. The next thing is kind of off point. So many people say this had to be professional. Look at the shot that was taken. And it strikes me as incredibly naive because your typical hunter with a deer tag can easily make that shot from 150 meters all day long. If he's a deer hunter, no big deal. He can do it on demand. And the idea that people are so out of touch with existence that they think there has to be some kind of professional expertise to take a typical deer hunter's shot. Now, the thing that gets me,
We gotta go.
yeah, but hold on. One thing, this is important. The thing that gets me is these college campuses are wicked because they set up a very poisonous atmosphere. They occasionally try to fudge and say, we're going to bring in a speaker who's unpopular, but they do very little to protect that speaker from the consequences of their previous policies. And that's what happened with Kirk. He got killed as a consequence of the previous policies that were set out there.
I think it was Israel.
Well, it may be, but it didn't need to be Mossad. It could be some crank. And by the way, I found something interesting. His parents, the alleged shooter's parents, helped apprehend him and turn him in.
Yeah. All right, we can talk about that later. So X Space tomorrow night.
I guess.
All right, guys, have a wonderful night. Bye.
Tune in tomorrow. Please have something to do besides whining about how you got mistreated.
All right. Good night, Judge.